Hey everybody, thank you so much for being here on the Facebook page. As you know, this is a Facebook page that is all about having a debate about children's books, specifically about multicultural children's books, and how we need more of it. And we are having some incredible interviews with people within different fields, discussing the subject of multiculturalism. And today we have a wonderful, very renowned writer. He's written 2 or 3 books, is that right? Two,
yeah.
books, all about the well-being of children, how to teach happy, the psychological nature and climate of the classroom, and how children can thrive in the right environments so that they can be the best that they can be. And we are with the perfect person here to talk about the well-being of children, specifically in regards to children's books. So this is Adrian. Hello.
Oh, hi Vanessa, thanks for having me.
Yes, it's wonderful. And we've known each other for a while. We met through our children being friends.
Playgroups,
didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
And I think I sort of, there wasn't much black people in Tring, so I think I kind of spotted you from the corner of my eye, and I know that you're dual heritage, but still it's coming through. So I was like, I'm gonna go say hello. And then we all became friends with Sam, your wife, your amazing wife. We became friends. So that's how we've met. So yes, and it's now led to this. So tell me, children's books, obviously at the moment there's a big conversation within publishing about the lack of, and I want to start off with a very powerful experiment that took place in the 1940s. I think it was the Brown versus Braun experiment, about the doll experiment, where the children had to pick a black doll or a white doll. I don't know if you...
Yeah, vaguely I'm aware of that.
Yeah, and it was such a powerful experiment to me because all the black children of that experiment chose the white doll as beautiful, as kind, when they were using sort of adjectives to describe each doll, and all the white children would choose the white dolls for the positive adjectives, but all the negative adjectives, both the white child and the black child would choose the black doll. And it was a massive realization about self-identity, well-being, and how lack of diversity or racism has such a profound effect on our children without us realizing. But tell us what your thoughts are about how the lack of affects our children. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess you've kind of hinted at it. From a really young age, our children are conditioned by the images that and the narratives, the stories that they're exposed to. And it can be really subtle, such as you go into a book corner in a classroom or a play group or something, and if 95% plus of the books have beautiful white children in them, or predominantly white children, it's conditioning very young children to think that this is what the world looks like. And what's really interesting about that experiment you talked about with the dolls is that, as you were saying, it made me think about an experiment that I allude to in my book, which is about kindness. And this experiment had inanimate objects. So there was a circle, a square, and a triangle with eyes. So they weren't, couldn't really identify them as white or black or anything. But essentially, I think the friendly circle, the circle's really kind, and when the triangle's trying to get up this hill, the friendly circle comes up and kind of gives it a push and helps it up, so that the circle was kind. And then when it gets to the top, the mean square comes along and pushes the triangle back down, and it falls to the bottom. And these were in the experiment, they had kind of pre-verbal children. So these were very young children that couldn't speak yet. And afterwards, they were given 3 toys to play with: a cuddly square, a cuddly circle, or a cuddly triangle. And most of the children went to the kind circle to play with, because on the screen they'd seen, the experiment was to show that we are naturally drawn to kindness and cooperation. And so potentially how I think it links to the dull experiment potentially is about the images that we're subjected to, that Black people are often aggressive and scary and frightening, and white people are friendly, cooperative and kind. And I think, from a young age, we're conditioned into thinking that by the stuff we watch on the news, the things we hear about, what we read in books, see in movies. So yeah, I think that's why it's really important to show a diverse range of characters on both sides of the spectrum. Yes, children need to know about right and wrong and characters doing wrong things and right things, but it needs to be representative rather than just one type of colour or race doing certain things.
Wow, I've never heard of that experiment. That's amazing. And I love the fact that you've spoken about kindness as well. And it is very sad that, stereotypically these subtle cues and these subtle images are being fed to our children. And that's what we want. We want our children to learn how to be kind and inclusive and aware and enlightened. And yeah, it's so dangerous that their minds are sort of being programmed to put that person of color in a box that subconsciously is giving aggressive negative signal. So yeah, that's really profound, that experiment. And what's so beautiful about it is that it's not about color or anything like that. It simply is just about humanity, about emotions and what we're drawn to. I think there's a massive shift that's happening at the moment, which is really exciting. I think with everything that's been happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's kind of opened up this sort of like portal of enlightenment almost. And I think that it is definitely an exciting time. But what are the solutions? I think sometimes it's really easy for us to go to these protests or talk about we need more multicultural books. But how do you think we can truly make a change that will penetrate the system, so that it's not just us having this debate today? And you being an educational specialist, what would you say is the processes that need to take place to build that infrastructure?
Well, I spend a lot of time kind of engaging in Twitter, because there's a edu Twitter community. So there's a lot of teachers, academics that are on Twitter, and they're sharing research, they're sharing ideas, they're talking, they're debating. And actually there is a lot of talk at the moment about, there's a phrase being used called decolonize the curriculum, which is really about not just, part of the solution is, yes, look at your libraries and schools and your book corners and do an audit and just see how representative they are. And simple things you can do is, stock your libraries with more diverse books and make sure that they're included in your curriculum materials, so that the books that you're reading in class to the kids, the ones you're studying in detail, how diverse and representative are they? But yeah, in terms of decolonize the curriculum, it's literally this, I guess, movement is starting, where it's like you need to literally look at everything that you teach and examine it. So I'm primary, so I have to teach a bit of everything, but let's say in secondary, if you're the head of department for science, you need to look at your curriculum and look at, the scientists, the people that have discovered things. Is it representative? Because we know that many famous Black scientists have literally been written out of history.
Yes.
And the plaudits are given to kind of typically white men in science, but that's also true of women as well.
Yeah.
Female scientists are often written out of history, and you know, the plaudits are given to the men. So it's about literally looking at everything that you teach: history, English, what the text that you're studying,
Yeah.
and that would have a massively profound change, I think, because I studied history at school, GCSE, A level, and went on to do an English degree, but I ended up doing a history dissertation as part of my degree, and was disappointed that when we studied history at school, the only time we touched on slavery was looking at the abolition of slavery in the UK. So it's predominantly painting politicians and some sections of society at the time as the heroes. Like there was
Right.
this bad thing that was happening, and yay, we abolished it, and things have moved on, and blah blah. But actually, when I went to uni and I studied the emancipation of slaves in America, and my Jamaican aunt, who was a sociologist, sent me a whole load of books, and my eyes were just opened up, like the
Mm.
breadth and depth of the slave trade and how long it lasted for, and how literally it shaped most of Europe, particularly the UK. Like you just don't learn that at school, and I
Right.
think education is the key, but
Yes.
we need to be brave at changing our curriculum materials, and we need to be, a phrase I'm seeing a lot is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So,
Yeah.
you know, some of the discussions we need to have are going to make people feel uncomfortable, and we just need to kind of get over that for the greater good, which is
Mm.
teaching children so that they can be aware of and live in a more inclusive and
Yeah.
cooperative society.
Absolutely. I'm going through the terrifying process at the moment of my first child going to
Mm,
school. And I remember we had a meeting with the headmistress, and she's going to a village school where she's probably going to be one of the only children of colour there. And I was terrified that it wouldn't meet her needs, in a sense of her feeling alienated or othered. But I
mm,
felt reassured after speaking to friends. I think I spoke to you about it as well, and a few
yeah.
other people, about the reassurance of the balance of giving and of her life, where she won't be culturally deprived if there's
Mm,
she has a rounded culture around her. But still,
yeah.
I remember when I sat down with the headmistress, that was one of the questions that I did ask. I asked about her library, but I also asked about when they talk about teaching about the world, because I know that in primary schools, part of the Ofsted policy is for them to learn about festivals, and it was interesting that they only said in the meeting that they learned about the world within the village. So of
Right.
course, being the annoying parent that I am, I sort of slowly put my hand up.
Yeah.
"Ah!" And I sort of asked them, well, it's good for them to learn about their village. It's the area that they live in, and it's their local area. But how are you going to teach them about the world?
Mm.
And I remember her sort of saying,
The actual world.
yeah, the actual world. And she was saying, well, the kids will find that quite an abstract concept. But then I sort of said to her, as polite as I could, you might have children in your classrooms where their parents are from a different part of the world. And it isn't an abstract concept to them because their mummy and daddy, that's part of their world.
Yeah.
And we sort of talked about it, and it opened up a really cool conversation. And I think that, as alongside the books, I think that we mustn't think that children are incapable of understanding about
Mm.
the world. It's not an abstract concept. I think they're so open
No.
and want to learn about Africa and India and Mexico and all these amazing countries and cultures and
Mm.
food. And so, yeah, alongside the books, I definitely think part of the awakening and part of the support of enlightening our children is to, you know, teach the world to them.
Yeah.
You know.
And of course they can understand it.
Yeah.
Like my son, similar age, is 4 years old, and like, you know, he's fascinated by the stars and the planets and
Mm.
dinosaurs, and that dinosaurs lived. I mean, obviously he doesn't understand
Yeah.
everything, but that dinosaurs lived a long time ago and that a meteorite came and wiped them all out. And, you know, like, they can talk about it, they can verbalize it. And through being exposed to ideas,
Yes.
like, he asks a lot of questions, you know, about the dinosaurs in the world. But
Yeah.
it's through those discussions that gradually you understand, and things that were abstract become more concrete.
Yes.
Something that happened right at the end of, well, said at the end of lockdown, we're still in lockdown technically, but so my dad is Jamaican, born in Kingston, Jamaica. My son and my wife is heritage is kind of Irish, Scottish. So we've got two boys, one who I would say looks dual heritage and one who looks kind of white. He's got blonde hair, blue eyes. And my dad came over and he hadn't had his hair cut for months, and I've got clippers. And so I said, "Oh, Dad, I'll cut your hair in the garden." And
Yeah.
boys were fascinated with my dad's hair because it was falling off, massive chunks of afro hair on the floor, and they were touching it and running around with it and giggling and loved it. But what was fascinating was that a couple of days later, so he was asking questions about the hair. "Why is your hair like this?" He calls him Umpa instead of Grandpa. And saying, "This is afro hair. It's really, really curly." And like kind of straightened it out and just said, "Look, your hair's like this, but my hair's like this." And it's just fascinating. It's a conversation. He's understanding that we have different type of hair. And then we're watching a program on CBeebies called Jojo and Gran Gran.
Yeah, Jojo and Gran Gran.
Yeah, exactly. And Eli made the link, was like, "Daddy, has that lady got afro hair?" And I was like, "Yeah, she's got afro hair." And like, suddenly he'd seen someone in a kids' TV program that looked like his granddad. And up until that point, I was just thinking, actually, most of the kids' programs that you're watching, you don't see people like your grandpa.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just think kids are inquisitive. Like, it's okay for them to ask questions about afro hair, and it's, you know, they just want to know and they just want to understand, and they're thirsty for knowledge. And yeah, teach them about the world, teach them about different cultures.
Beautiful
And also, I think
story.
when you're also showing difference in the world, make the links and show similarities as well. So this festival is you know,
Ramadan, like, yeah.
Ramadan, and this
Yeah.
is similar to our festival, which is this.
Yeah,
And like,
exactly.
so that was one of the really interesting things I found about teaching religious education, RE, as a primary school teacher, was how many links there are between different religions. So many similarities, and that was what I would always try and draw out. So yeah, you can show the differences, but actually, it's like, Jews typically believe this, and what does this remind us of? Oh yeah, this is similar to in Islam, that, you know, they believe this, and trying to make those links.
That is so
Because that's ultimately what I think we need to do, is celebrate difference, but really shine a light on our similarities and our common aims and our common goals and beliefs. And yeah,
that is so powerful. It's so powerful, because you're so right. We do so much, we concentrate so much on those differences. They're so amplified that it's like we're aliens from different planets when we all live on the same planet. And it's just a construct, isn't it? It's a total social construct, and we're really just expressing the same things: love, joy, pain, and just questioning what is. That's basically what we're doing. And some happen to have a little bit of melanin in their skin, and that's it. You know, and we all poo. I would swear, but this is kiddie friendly. We all poo, and we all puke, we all fart, and we all bleed. So, and but anyway, I didn't do this at the beginning, so I'm going to edit this in. So I'm going to pretend this section I'm going to edit out. But I need to ask you more about you and your background and how I didn't really ask that in the beginning. So I might just do a little segue here where it's almost like the beginning of the interview. So sorry about that, I forgot.
That's all right.
Okay. So I'm here with Adrian, and before we get into the juicy stuff, I just wanted to find out your background and your history. How did you get into teaching, and how did you get into writing these books about happy teaching?
Cool. So yeah, my background is I grew up in Barnet, High Barnet, um, which is London Borough, right on the outskirts of London. My dad's Jamaican, was born in Kingston, Jamaica, came over to the UK when he was a boy, probably about 14 years old. My mum's half Italian, half Irish. And yeah, grew up in Barnet, and eventually went to uni in Manchester. Got into music, even though I did an English degree. They had a music production college there, and I did a music production course because I was really into garage and drum and bass. And when I moved back home, back to Barnet, I got a job with Hospital Records, which is a drum and bass label. And then eventually, yeah.
Oh, cool. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And my job actually with them was I was a tour manager and sound engineer for their band. And so, yeah, traveled the world, went to Brazil, New Zealand, across Europe with them. Yeah. And then when the touring ended, I got a job with the Performing Rights Society, so kind of in music publishing. And then when I was about 28, late 20s, I went through a period of kind of acute anxiety that led to a bout of depression. And it's something I'd never experienced before. I'd had moments of ups and downs, just normal ups and downs, but this was really kind of acute, and I was not myself. And ended up seeing a counsellor and got some help with what I was experiencing, but also the type of person I am. I'm quite analytical, so I was kind of researching causes of stress, anxiety, depression. I wanted to understand what was happening to me. And I also discovered that there was a field of well-being, the science of well-being, so what actually contributes to human flourishing. And I just found this fascinating. It was stuff that I'd never learned at school that I wish I had. Anyway, part of my research showed that in terms of people leading flourishing, happy, fulfilling lives, often a theme that came up was volunteering. And so when I started to feel much better, I signed up to a mentoring scheme with a charity called Chance UK in London. And I mentored a 9-year-old boy who lived in Hackney. And actually, we were matched partly because of our backgrounds. He was a dual heritage little boy, he had a Jamaican dad, a white English mother, just like me. And I mentored him for a year. And yeah, I was still working in music publishing at the time. I used to do this in the evenings and weekends, the volunteering. And that made me want to retrain to be a primary school teacher. But also with the specific aim of focusing on children's well-being at school. Like I could see he had behavioural difficulties. He was being taught in a pupil referral unit. So he was kind of outside of mainstream school. But his mainstream school weren't really helping him. So yeah, I retrained in order to help kids like the one I was mentoring that were on the fringes, that at risk of being kicked out of school, and give them the skills and the knowledge they needed to kind of succeed and thrive in the world.
That's amazing. My parents do that. My mum's been running a school for 35 years, and lately it's a mainstream school, but she's just set up a department that specializes in children who have special needs or behavioral problems, or who aren't coping in mainstream schools. And she has such an amazing infrastructure of mentors, or behavioral mentors and therapists and things. And a lot of these children, their behavior is disruptive because they usually have an underlying disorder, or this Victorian-esque way of teaching isn't suited to the way that they want to learn. So mum has lots of vocational stuff that they do. So they do things like woodwork, or sometimes they can choose what they want to do rather than being forced. There's a lot of one-on-one teaching. So yeah, my mum does. Yeah, my mum does a lot of that stuff. Yeah. So and she turns them around. She really
Yeah.
turned them around. So I see what she does very much relating to what. I'll probably edit that bit. That's a bit long-winded. Sorry. But yeah. Anyway, I totally relate to what you do, and it's such a beautiful process. I could imagine it being so inspiring when you see the children turn
I mean,
around.
I learned loads through the mentoring, like about myself, about what is going on in the world. Like, boy that I mentored was growing up in, I would say, kind of extreme poverty. His mum had mental health difficulties, and and his brother was involved in local gangs. Like,
Right.
it is no surprise that he was struggling at school with his behavior. He as a young boy, as an 8-year-old boy, he had so much to deal with before
Yeah.
he even got through the school gates. And then we just expect someone like that to just sit down, do
Yeah.
their English, do their maths, behave.
Mm-hmm.
He needed a lot of help and support. And yeah, that's what I think a good education is. It's not just in the school grounds, it's like the whole community pulling together.
Do you think that, going off the subject slightly, because I did sociology, I loved it so much. I remember my thesis was about Afro-Caribbean boys and them having statistically the lowest. Well, at the time, it was statistically the lowest of achieving their GCSEs in school. And my conclusion was it was to do with self-identity and labeling. And I remember I did a little experiment and when actually sat in a class and analysed the teachers. And I did notice that there was like forms of labeling and then being put into different groups. Do you think that labeling is part of, as alongside, I'm trying to bring the dots together, but alongside having a lack of diversity in children's books where that children aren't seeing positive images of themselves, do you think that there's a whole, within education and schools, a whole sort of force that is causing our dual heritage Black or even children to fulfill a prophecy, self-fulfilling prophecy, where they end up being those negative stereotypes? So sorry to summarize, because of the stereotypes, the teachers internalize those stereotypes and project them onto the children, and they therefore then feel that's who they are. So it's a deeper issue than books, basically.
And that's definitely in a similar way that there is systemic racism in the police force, in that Black people are unfairly targeted by certain policing policies. It's also a societal thing, and that will seep into teaching as well. Like, Black boys are more likely to be kind of excluded in schools, and there's a very clear link between school exclusion and the criminal justice system. You're more likely to end up in prison if you've been excluded. And I think there is that bias. So rather than a phrase being used, rather than racism, is unconscious bias. That there is unconscious bias where maybe you can have two students doing similar behaviours, and the Black student will be picked up on it, or be given a harsher kind of penalty, be it detention or part-time exclusion, whatever, or more likely to be. And that definitely exists in schools, and there is data around that. I can't cite it off the top of my head. But and then that will become, self-fulfilling prophecies exist. If other people believe certain things about you, you might start to believe it yourself, and then you end up proving them and yourself right. And definitely, it's a deep issue.
Do you think that then, going back to the children's books, since being a parent, I honestly before I had kids, I used to just see children's books as these like things that, you know, a lot of the time, you know, I'd just see a really rubbish one and just like read it to my niece or whatever.
Yeah.
But since being a mother, they're really these like powerful portals. Like I found myself crying, like The Lion Inside.
Yeah, that's cool.
I
I
was,
love that book.
oh my God. I basically was acting like I was in church. I was saying hallelujah with the book. It was so
And it's also,
powerful to me. I cried
yeah,
with Effie. I cried.
yeah,
I'm sitting welled up now, just the small voice. Anyway, if you've not
yeah,
heard about The Lion Inside, please get it for your kids. It's so encouraging. And for adults, and I'm finding that there's like powerful messages for adults. So basically, what I'm saying is, I really believe that children's books, if we can give them powerful messages and a balanced spectrum of color, I think they can penetrate the sort of conscious bias of adults, because it will help our kids. It will help white kids. It will help black children. But I actually think that parents will see like a black child or dual heritage child or Asian child that's an astronaut. And if they're starting to read those books to those children, it actually might penetrate something within them. So they're almost like these like little nuggets of like power.
Yeah. I mean, it happens a lot in primary school. I hear it a lot from parents. Stuff you teach in school, books you read, the things you share, they then go home and tell their parents about it.
Yeah.
And teach their parents about it. So yeah, it can definitely happen. Kids starting to influence their parents, but also, yeah, if they take home a book from school and it's got some powerful and cool messages and a kind of rich palette of color inside, then yeah, it's definitely going to have an effect on parents too and open their eyes up.
Do you have a favorite children's book? Is there a children's book at the moment that you're reading to your children?
Well, The Lion Inside is definitely a favorite of mine. It's not just the message. I love the rhyming and the meter and the pattern. Like, it's really good. There are some rhyming books out there, I'm like, nah, that doesn't work.
Well,
But
there's
that
no
book
rhyme.
is just,
It's just
yeah,
like you want it to flow into the rhyme, and it's just like
the
dog and the frog went to the shop and saw a hippopotamus. Well, that might work.
yeah.
I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
At the moment, my son is loving Winnie the Pooh stories. Which is classic. And what's lovely about them is that they're really rich books in terms of the messages. There's lots of different layers. There's a lot of kind of philosophy in those books in many ways. But yeah, our 4-year-old is loving Winnie the Pooh at the moment.
That is definitely a classic. I've not Effie doesn't know about Winnie the Pooh. I think she might, if I say Winnie the Pooh, she's a bit into poo.
Oh right, yeah.
Going through a bit of it's like a rude word. We're having to say no, stop.
Maybe that's why Ela likes it.
It's kind of funny, Winnie the Pooh. It's got a poo, the H at the end. And is that just a surname or?
Yeah.
No idea. Anyway. Anyway, we can go on forever. I'm looking at the time. I know that we've got our dinner time with our families and kids, so I don't want to keep you, but it's been amazing talking to you about this.
You too, Nessa.
Tell everybody your books. I'm sure that after this, people are going to want to discover more about you as an author and your book. So if you just let people know what your books are and where we can find them. I'll also
I've got one, always have one on my desk, Wellbeing in the Primary Classroom. It's out with Bloomsbury. You can get it on Amazon or all good bookshops. The other one, which is Teacher Wellbeing and Self-Care, is not out until October. So I've literally just finished writing that with another teacher called Dr. Emma Kell, and that's out on Sage Publishing. So those are the two books that I've written, and check them out.
Please do check them out. Adrian is an amazing writer, and it will profoundly bring positivity and to your child's life, and just in general, it's just a great read to just enlighten and enrich yourself with new things. So please do check it out. I'll leave some links down here or up here. I'm not quite sure how Facebook works, but the links will be here. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, I'll see you soon, and give my love to Sam as well and the kids.
Indeed.
And yeah, it's been wonderful discussing the psychological side of well-being in the child in relation to children's books. And
cool. Thank you.
Check in, guys, for the next interviews. We're going to have much more coming. And take care. Thanks, Adrian.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.